Hello, this is Greg Allison Green Griggs coming to you on the 26th of January, 22. Time on deck, 1700 hours Central Standard Time. And I got a special guest tonight, General Ken Chrosniak. I'm going to introduce him in a minute, but I'm bringing this to you as part of our Eyes Wide Open and Head on the Swivel News series because, my friends, the world is going crazy right now. And if you don't know that you need to be aware of what's going on, then you've had your head in the sand. So we're going to try to pull your head out of the sand and tell you that this is the time to be aware, to prepare, to get your goods in order, because we don't know what's coming down. I have never in my adult life seen a mess like we got today. And I tell you, I've been in the military during the Cold War, and I've heard some of the reporters talk about, oh, maybe we're going back to the Cold War. Excuse me, in my memory of when I was in the Cold War, I never saw anything so tense as what we're having right now. I think this is the worst time since the Cuban Missile Crisis already, just given everything going on between Russia and China, Iran and North Korea. There's stuff that's going on in those areas that aren't even making the news right now. Even with China, there's things going on right now pretty hot that aren't even making the news because we're so focused on Russia and Ukraine. So we are in intense moments, guys. So you need to prepare. You need to get ready. And I got videos on that kind of stuff on this channel, and a lot of this awareness stuff. And I got videos. You need to know how to garden. I got videos on that. You need to know how to eat from the weeds and the trees. Got video on that. I've got a couple of videos that go in the box store. You need to prep. You need to buy stuff. The supply chains are breaking down. And so pay attention to all that stuff. And right now, what you need to do is subscribe to my channel, bang the update notification bell, and click all, so you can get more of these videos, hopefully as long as we are permitted to have a power grid and can keep this stuff running. Now, I don't know with everything going on, how long that's going to last, so take advantage while you can. But subscribe to my channel and share these videos wide, and while you can, stock up everywhere you can. And by the way, right now, I got a real good special. I got $150 off the 3-month supply of food. My Patriot Supply has brought it back, that really good special. So go to prepwithgreg.com to get that special. You got to go to prepwithgreg.com. It helps my channel, helps you. $150 off is a great value because they did not increase their base price for that, guys. That is a real special. And right now in inflationary times, that's hard to beat. You get 2,000 calories a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if you can't afford the 3-month supply, they even have they brought back the $50 off for the 4-week supply, which is 2 of these buckets. You get 2 of these buckets for each month, basically. 3-month supply is 6 of them, guys. So this really helps you. It's freeze dried, so you can carry it. You can bug out with it. You can bury it in your caches. And if you got to throw some in the backpack, these pouches are real nice to carry in a backpack, my friend. That's 4 servings. And as our friend General Chrosniak, who's carried a few backpacks, knows, and carried MREs and sea rats and all that, this stuff's a lot easier to carry than a lot of stuff that you got to deal with. 2,000 calories a day is an awesome deal. Prepwithgreg.com. There's many other prepping supplies there. Just when you go to prepwithgreg.com, click on the My Patriot Supply logo and go into the website, and I still get credit since you went in through prepwithgreg.com. So I appreciate that, everyone. So let me tell you about General Chrosniak. He's been on my channel several times now. He's a real patriot, and I'm proud to know him as a friend. He's come to 2 of my Power Grid defense conferences because he's really trying to do everything he can to help our country. And we know that the weak link of our country, our Achilles heel, is our power grid. But both for our civilian population and our military operations, both are highly reliant, believe it or not, on the civilian power grid, which is a dadgum shame, and it's not hardened. So we've been working that. But tonight we're going to be talking about what the heck's going on in the world, because the world's going crazy. And let me tell you about General Chrosniak. General Chrosniak actually started out as an enlisted man, and he made sergeant as an enlisted man before he went to OCS and became a commissioned officer. So he's actually worked for a living in the enlisted side. He knows what it's like to tell people to do the real dirty, grimy stuff that a sergeant's got to do. He's been in the foxholes. He's done the stuff. He's been to Vietnam. He's been to Bosnia. He's been to Kuwait. He's been to Iraq. He has been around. He has seen action. He's had 37 years of both active and reserve duty as active Army, as National Guard, and Army Reserve. Yes, Army Reserve. To top it all off, he's still an active firefighter, volunteer firefighter, you know, just to show you the caliber of the individual he is. And I tell you what, he's got a few years on me, but he's still out there and doing things that younger men would be very hard pressed to do. He got called up 2 times after he retired. And one of them is he was called up by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, in which he actually wrote the National Military Strategy for the War on Terror. And that's a huge thing. And he was also called up to go to Iraq, where he served as the commander of the Abu Ghraib after all the dirty stuff took place. He had to go in and clean that place up. And he's also was called back in to do counter sniper and counter IED work. So he has seen the rough side of things. He's also a student of history. He understands what combat has been like through history, something that a lot of people have lost sight of today. So he can tell us all about that. So Ken, tell us what are we walking into here with Russia and China, North Korea? What in the world are we getting ourselves into right now, Ken?
Oh, thank you for having me here, Greg. It's a time where literally you've heard the phrases before, and your audience has also. But we ain't got no dog in this fight. We have no national security interest in Ukraine at all. Not oil, not they're nice people. My nephew's a military intelligence officer, spent 9 months there with a reserve unit, sharp young man, and he's been asked to go back again. And he said he really enjoyed being there, but he was on the western portion, but it doesn't matter. First of all, we don't have any literal strategic national. They don't have chromium. They don't have oil. They don't have anything that we could use to sustain the United States. Also, they're not part of NATO, and NATO should not get involved on this. I hate to say that because they're good people. They're good military. They're patriotic to their own people. But let's just say that think theoretically on this. In fact, Russia has stated something like this. Putin has that. Let's just say that Russian forces came into Mexico, and let's just say that they were invited to Mexico and Canada, and they brought the equivalent of Patriot missiles and so on. How would we feel? The western portion of Russia has always been their underbelly. You can't attack Russia from the north. You can't attack it from the south, the mountainous area, all the stands. You can't attack it from the east, but you can always attack it through that plain, through Poland and so on. So that's why Poland has been partitioned, 4 or 5 times? Because I remember when I was at the Commander General Staff College, I had this, he was a major in the Korean War, and he's a history major, but he was a CGSC instructor in the Army Reserve. And he used to say, don't worry about the exam. I'll tell you what the questions are going to be. I'll stop my, don't worry about that. He said, I want you to study and put on a Russian hat, not Soviet, but a Russian hat. Because when war comes, they're going to go back to the mother Rodina, the Russian way of thinking. Church, which Stalin did away with, all of a sudden, churches started coming back again at the beginning of World War II, because a lot of the Catholics and Orthodox religions. Anyway, I'll tie this all together because they've always been invaded from the West. Napoleon, Hitler, it's there. And that's one of their greatest fears. And whereas we have Iranian and Soviet soldiers right there in Venezuela right now. In fact, I believe there's still some Venezuelan ships which operate freely off of the east coast of the United States out in international waters, which a lot of Americans don't know. They could have Scud missiles on them too, but I won't go there. Instead of bouncing around right now, I look about what interest do we have? What kind of war will it be? First of all, will it be a war with Russia? Not a war, but let's just say severe conflict, a middle level to severe level conflict. You have low intensity conflict, mid intensity conflict, and war. I mean, real war, like World War II.
Explain those for our listeners, because a lot of people equate the low density conflicts of war today. That's what they think war is. Okay. And I know that's not what you have in your mind. I know where you're coming from.
Well, a low intensity conflict, in fact, it's a meld of the low intensity conflict and a mid intensity conflict, to speak very simplistically, like Iraq and Afghanistan. If you were there and you're kicking doors in Fallujah, like my friend David Bellavia gets the Medal of Honor, kicking doors in and going over and try to encounter that. They're not soldiers, they're enemy. and then you're dealing with small arms fire, you're dealing with Katyusha rockets, some motors and so on, and IEDs and VBIDs, vehicle-borne IEDs, and you never know when it's going to strike. So your PTSD level is pretty high. But then again, you have a mid-intensity, which is actually, Iraq and Afghanistan are more towards mid-level intensities, that you're also dealing with insane rules of engagement. And your hands tied in many ways with point operations because you're trying to win the hearts and mind of the people. This is not going to be this way. This is going to bring you back to the way it was fought in World War II, maybe even, and most likely Korea also. We didn't even reach a full scale of all-out war with Vietnam, and they were regular military forces, although we were fighting mainly the you know what I mein, not the non-regular forces, the guerrilla forces. Anyway, and one of the things I used to tell my soldiers when I commanded Abu Ghraib up on the walls, I had Echo 210 Marines out there, great bunch of just fantastic troops. And I used to go up there, I was just telling Greg, I used to go up there oftentimes with my satellite radio and give it to them. They can talk to their wives or sweethearts, whatever. And they like that. But I used to get conversations going with them, and I waited for them to start about the intensity of that area of operations in being in Iraq. I was never in Afghanistan. I think the weather would have gotten me. I was raised in Buffalo, New York, so I don't want to die in the cold. I prefer the jungle, the desert. Anyway, I eventually got the conversation going about, I know we have it tough here because you don't even know where the enemy is. They don't have uniforms on. It could be Syrian. They were. They could be Iranian, and they were the snipers. But you had to deal with it. You go out on a patrol, and you were practically committing suicide closing that Humvee door because you volunteered to go out there. It was a tough road. But now I used to tell them, now just imagine out there with those date trees that there's professional infantry, Wehrmacht, and that want to kill you, and they're ordered to. And they've got real tanks, Panzer tanks, not Sherman tanks, that piece of crap we had. They have artillery. A lot of times they had air parity, and maybe even air superiority, even during the Battle of the Bulge, limited. But you had real soldiers coming at you. And by the way, it was about 5 degrees below zero. And you're going into the Ukraine. I'm not sure if we have our wonderful treasure of our country, our youth, our soldiers, sailors, air and Marines, Coast Guard, the treasure of our youth, that with really no purpose, it doesn't affect mom and apple pie back home. We have no national interest there. It's tough to obfuscate an issue, and I won't go that way politically. It's an ugly scenario, especially when you start moving troops. Right now, look what we have right now. Greg, we're giving $50,000 bonuses to anybody. We're probably negating some of the 4F categories to bring these people in. We're hurting for people. We're spitting people out. We're SEALs, fighter pilots, Marine fighter pilot. There's one on Fox News yesterday. He's leaving because he's not taking the jab. It's not a vaccine. He's not taking the jab, and we're already losing quite a few. I think it's thousands we're losing, and I don't think we have the same military as we had back at the greatest generation this country has. We had great generations, but during World War II, they were steeled by a depression that was devastating. Now, can you imagine that right now? They would be steeled by. They were steeled by that in hard times, especially with not only that, the depression, but also just trying to stay alive. Make work projects at parks and so on, trying to feed them. I'm elaborating a little bit too much on this, but we don't have them steeled right now.
Well, I'll elaborate a little bit on that, Ken.
Please do.
My dad's generation grew up real tough. Life was hard. It was not a little hard. It was very hard. They ate an Olympic style diet just to stay alive while they were working. That's how hard they were working. They were busting it all the time, day to dark. And they had to scratch for a living, and they didn't get much out of it except for the right to sit down at the dinner table. They didn't get all
Right.
these, they didn't get money. They didn't get all the stuff that people are used to today, and people don't want to work today if you throw money at them. But back then, it was almost like fighting just to do the job they had to do to survive. They scratched for their living. And I did videos of my dad, and I asked him the kind of questions I wanted to illustrate that. It was a tough time. And those are the tough guys that we sent over to World War II was my dad's generation who went through the Great Depression. They had been through extreme hard times. They knew what it was like. And, you know, they were tough guys. They were tough. You know, they would actually have fist fights for fun with each other. Just that was their means of entertainment. They were hard, scrappy individuals, and before they went in the military. So that's what we had then. You know, today we're very soft by comparison. All of us, we've had it made. We got machines doing so much stuff for us, and people are spending all their time, you know, on their little devices and stuff all the time. You know, they didn't have that. They were out doing it. So it's going to be a different world.
It's going to be, especially if it's compounded more with that access collusion agreements, whatever they have between amongst Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia, is that literally, and you'll read the news, not that you should listen to the news that much, but the news will say the good conservative news I'm hearing is that the Chinese are just salivating at this because they will make moves. I'd be shocked if they don't. They will make moves on Taiwan, which won't. You look at the lines of communication. Lines of communications is logistics and so on. It's what? Just a few hundred miles from the east coast of China to Taipei, or Taipei City, to Taiwan. From Hawaii alone, it's 5,800 miles. It's 4,552 miles from Australia. Okinawa is about 902 miles. I remember that. And Guam is about 1,000, little under 2,000 miles. They're going to be vaporized. They're going to be gone. They will. Also, China has already hardened their east coast to an EMP. This is about 15 years ago they did. 15 years ago. That used to be very classified. It isn't anymore. Well, I hope it is, but if it isn't, it isn't. They're hardened to an E1 pulse. Our Navy, so warships are undoubtedly hardened to an E1 pulse, but are the Australian warships, the Japanese, the South Koreans, if they're foolish enough to get involved with this? Because once that's triggered with China and Russia, what do you think Kim Jong-il is going to do? Who's going to stop him? The 2nd Infantry Division? When their wives and families are still in SOCO and still in South Korea? We haven't moved the non-combatants out. And if we do, and the ships that are resupplying on the lines of communication, try all the way from the west coast of the United States, if we can get the dock workers to work, and the truck drivers.
Now you talk about lines of communication.
Well, let me finish. Look, that's the lines of communication. China, Russia, and North Korea said they will use, it's in their military doctrine. I can show you, it says word for word, we will strike the United States with a high altitude nuclear burst over their country and bring them to their knees. The very first strike, they will hit us with an EMP. So that Patriot food, I would suggest, don't go crazy, but to become literally, and you have a lot of prudent preppers out there. You don't have some of the crazy ones with crossbows going through the neck and all that, the Walking Dead and all that. No. I don't want good people, but
we got good people on my channel.
You got good people, prudent, trying to save their family. Biblical. They're the Noah. They're trying to save their family. Like it's biblical. As Tommy Waller explained that, he knows that better. He's more religious than I am. But it will be a 2.5 war scenario, which we used to be very good at. We do not have the military right now to fight a 2.5 front war. We do not even have a military that can fight one.
About a half war.
They'll hit our ships with an EMP or roll-on shifts, the ships and so on, and they'll just be floating bricks. We'll be lucky if they don't destroy them with conventional weapons. Don't waste a nuclear round. They will hit nuclear on Guam. They will hit nuclear on Okinawa. I would. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me? You backed out of Afghanistan, got 13 of your people murdered, the president and Mark Milley, you killed, there's blood on your hands. You killed all those Marine, Navy, and Army, 13 treasure of my country, the youth, and you disgrace the allies. You endanger them. They still have citizens over there that are caught. Like we still have U.S. citizens. Would you trust the United States as an ally? No. And one more thing, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, pretty sharp guy, Heighten. They conducted 12, I think he said 12 exercises, and he actually he said this in a speech, and it was in some military, maybe the Army Times, I don't know. There's people that make a living writing that stuff, C4ISR and all that stuff that nobody reads. But he and the PACOM commander both said on different days, they ran 12 scenarios, air, sea, and land, to the relief or defense of Taiwan. Not if, but when the Chinese attack. And they said words like this. Some of the words they said, I think the Heighten said, they kicked our butt. We lost all 12 of them. I think the PACOM commander said they kicked our ass. Who cares? We lost. That means we lost a lot of people too. But this affects also, as an aside thing right now, I'm also working with the counter-suicide.
Hey, Ken, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Did those scenarios account for an EMP? I mean, our military runs on data fusion. Our military runs on high-level communications. We got the very sophisticated electronic weapons and weapon control systems. They're great when they work, but if they get fried, they're just boat anchors.
Well, that's just it, Greg. You get two things as far as the military goes. The military right now, they have MilSatCom, military satellite communications. We use so much bandwidth. We don't need all of that. They use so much bandwidth because the commanders want to know everything. They want to see everything. They're oversaturated, overloaded. So they had to go out to ComSatCom, commercial satellite. We leased them from companies. We even leased ComSatCom from Russia when we invaded Kuwait. So I won't go there because we didn't have any maps. We were actually borrowing their maps. We were actually rerouted some of the satellites Russia did for us. But here's the thing. If they hit our satellites, which they can kill satellites, but you don't even need that. An EMP will take out your GPS and your cars here at home. But most important for the military is PNT, the position, navigation, and timing. Everything runs on PNT. Artillery. We don't have artillery anymore that we, like when I was an 8-inch nuclear unit, 8-inch artillery, 240 millimeter on the tank chassis. We went up, put stakes up, everything was done manually. We don't do that anymore. It's done by computer. It's like computers, like a big SCADA system, you know what? Mm-hmm. Here's one more thing. The military relies on that a lot. The thing that bothers me most is that when they hit us with an EMP in the United States, in fact, they already stated that if they fired off a nuclear ICBM right in the middle of Nevada, they just said this a week or so ago, just to display. They didn't say it was inferred by some general doctor, whatever. If they just to show what they can do. We have no defensive capability to hit like the Satan missile, which has 12 or 21, 12 warheads on it, all nuclear. One missile with almost hypersonic speed. And on the southern coast, we have no Aegis missile systems down there. Questionable in the north. We're completely exposed. But people say, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Right? No. We've let our defenses down over the past 20 years fighting a low intensity conflict with, I mentioned before, there are practically pissant military units, good units, brigades and so on, striker brigades, brigade combat teams, really lethal, much more lethal than a regular army infantry or armored division in World War II, probably twice as much, tremendously lethal. But we got 15 of them. China has armies. We don't have military thinkers that think like Patton, like Marshall, like Eisenhower, like MacArthur and Nimitz. We don't have those leaders anymore. We have them at the operational and tactical level, like Mark Milley. He and I were colonels together, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the father of CRT and gender studies in the military. Yeah, what are you going to do? Yeah, we can fight them with CRT and gender studies. That'll really scare the hell out of the Russians. But you and the Chinese and the North Koreans. But what I'm trying to say is we have lost that. When I was teaching at the War College back in 1990. When I was a student back in 1990, we had every student there had to come up with a national security interest for the United States, whether it's strategic, it is important, critical, important, or sort of nice to have. And I took South Africa. It was an easy one. The only thing we ever imported there was chromium, so it was an easy one. And how we would fight Russia for that domination of chromium. So I had an easy one. I got my A, and I was happy. But we went in actually on a dive of what does this mean for the United States? How are we going to bring more body bags home to fight for Ukraine? What did we win with this? What are we doing? It's not for the freedom. I lose no sleep over here. What are we going to do? We have to protect. We are the best. We used look at right before World War II. We were still fighting maneuvers with horses on the battlefield. Between Patton and some others, they used to have arguments about horses. Of course, Patton was a healthy man. He had his own Lippensteiner or whatever, who knows. And at the same time, in 1938, the Blitzkrieg, the Germans were ahead of us. We didn't know about Blitzkrieg. They did combined arms, land, air, and armored deployment in Spain. Took it over the Blitzkrieg in Poland. All of a sudden, how did they get that? Because they must have had England and the rest of the nations must have had the same lousy intelligence that we have right now in America. We should have known. We should have known that we would reach this. It was just complacency. And under the previous administration, let's just say I don't believe we would have this situation right now. But you're either political or you're not political. You either have side or not side, have sides and so on. But one of the things that I had mentioned a note really about the strategic leaders and so on, like when Mark Milley and I were colonels together. When that Marine Echo 210, they were shot up pretty badly. I had lost about 30% of them. He brought in a company, Captain Fehrenbach, from the 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain Division, and Mark spent about 2 weeks with me. He brought more weapon systems, and he brought more concertina wire, the good stuff that really cuts you bad if you try to get through it. It wasn't hard wire, but he was fantastic. But he's two combat infantry badges. The guy's a warrior. He's a good warrior, a good killer. But at the tactical and operational, I do not believe that he has the strength and the intelligence to be at this completely strategic level, especially when you're dumb enough to call up the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the equivalent over in China, and say, I'll call you if we're going to have a nuclear strike. That's the kind of people that are in leadership positions now.
What happened to him? What happened to him, Ken?
Pardon?
What happened to Mark Milley?
He's still there.
Oh, I know he's still there, but how did he get?
He was groomed up during the Obama administration, so that says it all.
There you go.
Same as some others like General Allen, who's retired now. I mean, he's in charge of Brookings Institute, completely leftist institute. Doesn't even a 4-star Marine doesn't even have a combat action ribbon on. But
how many field grade officers did that administration get rid of? They purged quite a few.
I know some of them. I know some because they were teaching that you have to know your enemy. They were teaching is the Islamic way of war, and at the National War College, no, not National War College, the Joint Chiefs of Staff College down in Norfolk, and they let this one Lieutenant Colonel go, who's really sharp. In fact, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mullen, I think, that guy, another Obama general, and but then again, I think President Trump had a chance to. Well, I got even surprised by others like General Mattis, who I used to have great respect for. He just promulgated the lies about the Trump, saying, I'm not going to go visit a bunch of dead soldiers at Normandy. He didn't say that, but it was in the Brookings Institute magazine. And all of a sudden, the American Thinker, or whatever, the American, whatever, rag. And it is those kind of people that have been traitorous along the way. They're just, it's such a shame. Now you have General, that he was in the, I'll think of his name, McIntyre. No. Anyway, I'll think of it pretty soon. He's a very good thinker. He worked with at the National Command Authority, and he was just fantastic. But President Trump, there was some collusion there with others. But then you get some really classy strategic thinkers, like the 4-star Marine general that was President Trump's chief of staff, and I can't remember that gentleman's name. He's a very good strategic thinker, but he retired, unfortunately, and Kelly, General Kelly. But we can discuss it. I don't believe this is not going to turn out well. And I think it's when you have such a, and I'll mention it, when you have such a low approval rating and so on, this is a great way to try to attempt to coalesce the support of the American people by entering us into a war, even a semblance of a war.
So you see this as a wag the dog. You think that we're going to go into war in part because our current administration is doing so badly that they'll take us into this. Is that what you see here?
I think. Yeah.
Wow. So, a lot of people have been looking for a way out of this. Like, can we find a diplomatic solution? I had David Pine on my show here a few weeks ago proposing treaties and things that we could do to avoid this. And I'm going to have him on here again tomorrow. But this is all coming down so fast. I'm beginning to think that our prospects for getting out of this are diminishing very rapidly. What do you think?
Well, we can stand down slowly or pretty quickly if we want to.
But will we?
I don't know. Putin's got quite a bit of a stronghold too. Putin also has another reason. He controls the oil going into NATO nations.
Right.
Foolishly. Another one.
Amen.
And his annexation of Crimea. He has a perfect opportunity to turn on the spigot to the water going from Ukraine, who built dams across rivers going into Crimea, which is an arid area. And they've been really hurting for for water. So by taking Ukraine or good portions of it, he can have control over that and reopen that to his Crimea. And that's another reason I think he's doing. Plus, look at the lines of communication also, all the way from Norfolk, Virginia, or whatever. Look at all the way to the Ukraine. And will we be able to use NATO stockpiles and NATO forces? Not NATO forces, but NATO stockpiles. It's like General Jack King said, if the world was right, we would move NATO forces into the eastern part of the Ukraine to help decentivize, help deter Putin's attack. I know what kind of shell game Putin has, but he's smarter than Biden. He's much smarter than anybody in the White House staff, much smarter than the military Joint Chiefs of Staff too. When I briefed the Joint Chiefs of Staff a couple times, General Powell, the 4 stars that were surrounding me and asking me questions during very, very intense time, just prior to the invasion. And it was interesting because there were a lot of intelligent people there from all the services. And now I'm looking out, and they're like General Hackworth. We used to converse with me. We used to write to each other not long before he died. But General David Hackworth, he called them perfume princes. And I always liked that term. I thought that was very appropriate for what's going on right now.
Perfume princes.
Yeah, that was his favorite one. In other words, but we even had him back in World War II. Look at when Patton relieved General Friedendahl in North Africa, that was directing his troops, but he was literally hiding in a bunker. Patton couldn't find him. He went over and relieved him. Right, boom, boom. You're out. Of course, he went back to the States and lived a pretty good life, probably at the Pentagon somewhere, whatever, in charge of widgets. Whatever. I don't know. But he wasn't a killer. He wasn't a leader of troops. So you don't, not disgrade, not, I'm not worried about, I've seen soldiers really, just freeze. And when we have no control over motors and so on, you just freeze. And I don't blame him at all. I'm not throwing the first stone. Who knows what was on the general's mind, but the word was getting down to the troops. He hardly ever left that compound. You go out to the front. You are darn close to it. You get out there. You don't send your staff. Anyway, this is my own pet peeve. You go to the sound of the cannon. But now this is a travesty of my American youth, the treasure of our country. Are going to be.
So you don't think that we're just going to go to the borders of our NATO Eastern Bloc NATO allies and keep Russia from invading them? You see us getting involved in Ukraine directly?
I'm not sure. I can see us getting involved, but it would be a real trip. Let me think about this for a bit. I hope we aren't involved. And everybody that's going to be listening to your our message or discussion with them right now, I can see it happening, but I can see us as being overwhelmed. Russia's not in the greatest shape either. They have a geriatric country.
Yeah.
Economically, they're getting by. Actually, China, in some ways, even with their Belt and Road and their 5G and soon to be 6G and whatever, and water resources and so on, they're not in the best of shape either. That's why I always said when you corner a rat, they're going to attack. You need more resources. That's why you go down to Peru and buy up a bunch of land, a bunch of ports and so on, especially in a communist country now. They just declared themselves communist. So that brings us closer to ICBM distance in the United States with no Aegis missiles that can intercept them anyway on the southern border. None. We have better surface-to-air missile protection from ICBMs over in South Korea than right in our own country.
Did you say Peru?
True.
Peru just went communist?
Yeah. They elected a nuke, and he's opened up I think they bought quite a few kilometers of a port all along the western seaboard of Peru.
I know they always had strong communist insurgents in Peru. China got involved in that way back.
I remember that. I was supposed to go down there with some drug stuff and all that. Yeah. They were insurgent. The red something or the red shadows or the red. Right.
I remember.
Yeah, but
that. So
somebody else volunteered to go instead of me.
That's sad. That is really sad. So now we got Venezuela, Cuba, and Peru to be concerned with, and
maybe Brazil in the not too near future.
Well, right now Brazil's not in that category, but they could flip. I could see that because they were heading that way at one point. So you're disposed to think that China, and I know Iran has been sending a lot of stuff to Venezuela. You think China and Russia also are sending missiles and things to Venezuela already?
Oh, they can. Plus, don't forget, North Korea has fired 2 satellites going over the United States twice every 4 hours. Yeah,
every 90 minutes. Every 90
minutes, at about 400 kilometers. Now, Iran has fired a missile, a satellite also that comes over a very similar trajectory from the south, and probably at the same rotation. I think are they armed with even a half a kiloton or a kiloton? Probably not, because weight-wise, unless it's weight-wise, that weighs quite a bit. Even 10 kiloton weighs quite a bit. I'm going on information I knew about years ago. I don't remember what kind of plutonium, or I used to know this quite well because I used to brief on it. But no, I think I'm not quite sure when it would trigger actual. They'll be shooting, they'll be sniping back and forth, some engagement, some artillery, whatever. But actually, troops crossing the border, I can see Russia doing that and getting into open combat with them, close, personal, hand to hand. I don't know. That's what I envision. And I can see that happening with Ukraine, and then be supported with U.S. either logistically or with U.S. combat troops or with air power. Augmenting the Iranian or the Ukrainian Air Force, which I don't know how robust that is. They're probably trained back here in our own country like we usually do. But I can see the carrier battle groups doing that. Of course, the carrier battle groups will be a significant target, depends on where they fire from, which would probably be in the Gulf area, where my son is now in the Marine. And you have the swarming techniques with the Iranians with their small boats that can be vaporized also, but there's a lot of them. And I don't say drones, they're not drones, they're remotely piloted vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles, they're not drones. But popular term. It's a dangerous time to be alive. I have no thoughts about my troops overseas and so on. I just care about what's going to be going on in this country right now.
Yeah, so
I believe the cyber attacks are going to increase.
That's what our viewers are going to want to know is that, yeah, it's probably given that we're going to get some big cyber attacks. We know that they could, if they really want to, they could take down our grid with cyber attacks. I just had Peter Vincent Fry on there. Dr. Fry was talking about Cybergeddon, and he wrote an article about that. I believe in national interest. Also, David Hine is writing in National Interest magazine too. So he's going to be on here tomorrow. So what people need to understand is what you said. It's the doctrine of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And it has been for some time. It's in the written military doctrine. The first thing they do if they get into it with the United States is put an EMP attack on us. That means we lose our power grid here. That means that according to the EMP Congressional Task Force, 9 out of 10 people will not be with us a year later. And I'm here to tell you that's probably optimistic because there's some things they did not take into account that I talked about in the past. It's going to be, we could be in for very, very ugly times right here. And I've told my people watching, I said, even the best of circumstances, if none of this happens, we don't get directly into bang, bang war, we're going to see far worse, much more disruptions in our supply chains. Prices are going to go up. The cost of fuel, natural gas is going to cause food prices to skyrocket. Farmers are just not even hardly going to be able to grow stuff. It's going to be ugly. So I think in the best of circumstances, we're in for an ugly road ahead. It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be.
It's like our he's a good friend of yours and a good friend of mine is John Hollerman, an Air Force retired NCO, survival, escape, resistance, and evasion instructor, SEER. His favorite term is, and it's really quite true. I avoid that. I include that quite a bit on a lot of my writings, and I give him the credit for it because he said, hope for the worst, hope for the best, plan for the worst, and let God do the rest. Because you have no authority over it except to take care of your family and so on. Worrying about the amount of toilet paper in the stores is not going to be an issue. Don't worry about that anymore. but let your heart not be troubled, like my good friend Hannity would say, is that we have soldiers out there with CRT and gender studies that'll beat hopefully they'll all be transsexuals attacking us. Who knows? I don't know. It's a bad time. Sometimes I really wish I was alive back in right around the World War II time frame when the country was really together. And really enjoyed our troops and so which they do now, which leads me to one other thing. But if anybody knows any, I'll send you something, Greg, if you can send it out. It's written by Brian Sully. He was Lieutenant Colonel, Marine military police in Vietnam. I think he was in the 516th when they were all shut up just before I got there. Before I got there in 67 centuries ago. He was also FAA risk manager, who his people actually found out about the security of they took off from Boston, the first plane going into the tower on 9/11, and they had just written a report about how soft it was. About 80-90% of the people, some of his people got through with pistols and all that kind of stuff, and it was bad. Anyway, he's a brilliant man. He works with me with American Leadership Policy Foundation with David Stuckenberg. And he just told me yesterday, 163 veterans and active duty military killed themselves between July and September of 2021. right around the time of Afghanistan. It's going to increase a lot more right now. Even one of it was even a nephew of a friend of his, and he went to the funeral a couple of days ago. Yesterday, went to the funeral. It's the toll it's taking. I don't. I think it's going to. If anybody wants to, I'll get that to you, Greg, because it's got to get out amongst. And then you get even like the VA, which does wonders and so on, but it's politically, it's ruled by politics. They did away with the in-person eyeball to eyeball. Here you sit down, have a Diet Coke with me, and talk about when the demons come to you, I'll help you. And they did away with that because of COVID. Yeah, the COVID.
Oh, Lord.
Damocles sword, which was really stupid. So I said, well, just go ahead and have your own. Have them over at your home. Having COVID is the least of their worries. These guys have all been through all kinds of stuff. They've already used 7 of their 9 lives already, as I have, and you have. I have definitely. So it's nothing against the falsification of COVID, but yeah, it's about the falsification of COVID. But I'm going to send you that information, and if you can get that out with all of your wonderful people, and you can spot it when somebody's having a bad, not day, but days. Something's wrong. I had a good friend of mine. He's a fellow firefighter. He didn't make his next higher rank in the military. He was Army. He didn't make general, and he's told me what he was contemplating, just doing a foolish thing. But you just have to be his battle buddy, because I'm very strong towards battle buddies. My battle buddy when I commanded in Iraq was a Spec 5, E5. He was the veterinarian. They used to go out and shoot wild dogs and all that kind of stuff because they kill you. Because they are used to eating human bodies.
I grew up on a farm. People throw their dogs out all the time in the rural areas, and you had to take care of them, or they would form packs and attack the kids and the livestock.
He was my battle buddy. Even during some tough times, I would try to. He would usually call me because I was busy thinking about things too. Just checking to see if I'm. So I had 3 personal security. I had 3 bodyguards with me all the time. Anyway, I only had $50,000 on my head. I felt insignificant, but I had 3 PSDs, personal security attachment people, who are still my good friends. One of them's a Secret Service agent in Washington. Anyway, you just having that battle buddies. That's all you need is somebody to talk to before you decide to use your sidearm. It's a great, but I'm saying that's going to increase exponentially because it already increased after our debacle in Afghanistan, because veterans from the Korea, Vietnam, you say, what did I lose my leg for? The Marxists are taking over. What did I die? What did my friends die for?
Bingo. What did I fight for? What was I fighting for? My son asked me that. My son was in Kuwait and went into Iraq, and he asked me that. So what did I fight for?
Yeah, because
you and I both come from military families. You got your son in the military. Mine was in the military. My older brother was in the Army. My dad, my granddad. We just going back. I had tons of uncles that fought. We've been in every war that this country's ever had in my family.
Yeah,
my family has been in every conflict America has ever had, everywhere.
That's fantastic. I mean, it is.
But now there's a lot of doubt. It's like, what's it all about? Why are we here, and why should we go into this? Is a big question. Now, I feel for the people in Ukraine.
Well, that's the problem. That's where the Mark Millies of the earth and so on should have gone in and said, here's my 4 stars. We're wrong. We should stay at Bagram. We're wrong to go 2-hour drive into Kabul, where the Taliban is responsible for the security of my Marines. That's what General McKenzie said. That the piece of crap is a 4-star CENTCOM commander. Never been in combat either. McKenzie's got to say, well, the Taliban, we're dealing with them because they're in charge of our security. What? An enemy force is in charge of the United States Marine security? Wow.
That's unfathomable. Unfathomable.
But you get the generals to go and say, what are we doing here? This is against our national interest. We have no interest there whatsoever. We feel bad for them. Give them supplies, give them artillery, give them tank. You know, they know how to use them. In fact, the Germans for the last 2 years ago, they outgunned the U.S. forces on the tank range and the foxes bite on your toes. I've been there before, out in the middle of nowhere in Germany. Baumholder, maybe, I can't remember. Hohenfels. Yeah. Anyway, they're good. They're fighting for their country. I don't want my nephew to go over there and die for their country. He'll never be thought of again. He's got a brand new baby, about a year old now. The baby will never know. You didn't die for God and country. You died to raise your popularity status in the United States. Because ultimately, they don't care. They don't care. Like the LBJ and so on. I remember when I landed in Vietnam, it was about 2 a.m. I landed in Vietnam and got off the plane, and all the cool air was sucked right out. And all of a sudden, in fact, I even joked with the guys. I said, give me my 45 now. I'm just going to blow my brains out right now because I can't stand this for a year. Well, you get accustomed to it. But when I did have a chance, we were waiting for orders to say what unit we go to. So we had beer and whiskey and wine. We had everything. Not like when I was in Bosnia and all that kind of stuff. We treat soldiers like babies. But I went over, and the only beer you could buy is Lone Star beer, brewed and bottled in Lubbock, Texas. And guess who owned Lone Star beer?
LBJ.
His wife.
His wife, Lady Bird. Oh my God.
Dizzy Broad. Yeah, she owned it. So, and then I said, I remember Dad, follow the money. Let's see. Dad did not raise a stupid young man. You know, just wow, somebody's making money off this, especially the way these guys suck up the beer. Anyway, this is as a side note because I'm watching a wonderful series right now on TV, a Canadian show called Murdoch Mysteries that you really get hooked in on. And the chief inspector of military, police inspector says, follow the money. And almost every show, you just follow the money and you'll find the culprit, not the butler. You'll find the culprit that did the murder. And it's just fantastic right now because my wife and I still joke about it. And this one too, follow the money somehow because BAE, Northrop Grumman, they're licking their chops right now. They're licking their chops. You got to replace the $83 billion that we blew in Bagram Air Force Base. Here, buy this, a discount. Comes with a maintenance package that costs a few $100 billion more. But you know what I'm talking about. Well, I think we've put enough sunshine into this conversation as possible right now. It's just that just live prudently, take care of yourself. I am going to contact you about some of that Patriots supply. I have a different organization right now that John Hollerman has. It's called Food Assets. It's really quite good too. They look to buy a year or 4 years, buy a year's supply, and the cost has gone up over the past few months already.
Yeah.
Like 1 year was 4,200. Now it's 5,200. It's going up.
Oh yeah, feed prices are skyrocketing right now.
So if you're going to do it, like with yours, do it now.
Exactly, do it now. And it may not even be available in just a few months. I mean, we don't know. For one, with supply chains shattering, and two, the prospects for an EMP, we may not have any of this stuff available to us.
Well, even the plastic bins and so on. That's the supply chain.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. The packages they seal it in. Hey, the ball bearings that roll the stuff across through the factory. I mean, when the supply chains are starting to unravel, everything is at risk. People don't understand just how many little pieces it takes to run a factory.
Oh yeah.
Or any kind of distribution system. And even though it's food, it may grow in a field. It's processed in factories. I have worked in a chicken plant at one time. I worked in a cotton mill. I worked in 2 factories that took agricultural product and made them something a consumer could use. So I've been there, done that. There's a lot of factories involved in all this stuff.
Yeah.
People just don't realize what all it takes to run these factories. It's logistics. It's supply chain. That's what it takes to run a military that you filled way out there. You have to have a really good supply chain. And as somebody who was an armorer at Fort Bragg and was told we had to be ready to send our guys to the Iranian hostage rescue attempt. And I had 250 people in my unit. only 200 M16s and only 40 of them that function because I didn't have the little bitty springs to run the ejectors to kick the round out of the chamber. You know, you got an extractor that pulls it out of the chamber.
Oh, yeah.
You got the little pin in there on that bolt.
I can see it now.
And it's got a little bitty, tiny little spring in there, and a bucket of my whole full bucket, which probably would have served a brigade, but it might have cost you $5, and I couldn't get them.
There's one thing I wanted to say before I have to go, Greg. It's compressed what you said. I used one of my friends at the Pentagon, my first call up, a colonel. He had in his office or in his cubicle a poster of soldiers going through a mount, through urban combat. The one's looking east, west, north, south, and they're all armed and doing 360, keep heads on a swivel.
Bingo.
And it said the difference between a click and a bang is logistics.
Oh, amen.
Otherwise, that's going to get you killed. You need the lines of communication. You got to be able to resupply, and the Russians can do that. We can't. We can't do it in China. We can't do it in some. Well, the second division is going to disappear because they're going to hit. They already said they're going to hit the southern EMP. So I'm hoping, and I know what assume means. I know exactly what the word assume means. That we have some protection from E1, which I'm pretty sure we don't. So it'll even hit home even more with the military families there, because there's going to be a lot of suffering going on, because we cannot evacuate the non-combatants in a rapid manner.
All right.
But anyway, we can sit here all night talking about the scenarios.
Oh yeah. What's your final advice for my guys here at home or watching? We got people, we got family people, we got mamas and papas and grandparents watching. They're taking care of their kids and grandkids.
I would say, just pray about it now. You have no control over anything. Your vote doesn't mean an awful lot anymore, unless you're in a state that actually is able to collect good votes and so on. But I would just say, plan properly. Order what you think you need if it's in your own financial means, and that's all I can say. I'm even in the same situation. We'll see how things play out. I don't know. My son's right over that. He's right in Bahrain right now. Ship, and so I'm worrying about that too. But I can almost I can't really give any advice, because I'm trying to synthesize this myself, and I know things, that I'm aware of how things should be, but this is coming a little too fast. I only wish it would be thought through, which at the Pentagon, they're not proactive, they're reactive. We don't have the thinkers. We do not have the strategic, refined, controlled thinkers that we've had in the past.
That's scary. Now, see, what worries me is I know, we have troops under our command. We're putting troops under NATO command, including a carrier task force. The Harry S. Truman is under NATO command now, which is the first time in decades. And so we don't have full command of all of our people that are going in over there. We don't know how they might be deployed. And David Pine, who's been a military strategist dealing in Europe, he thinks that just going over there and going into the East Bloc countries that are NATO members now, and meeting the guys at the border would provoke Russia to attack us. He thinks that we're pretty much heading toward a war. At least that's what I got from him last time. We'll hear from him again tomorrow night. So everybody watch this. Tomorrow night will be a very interesting show. Ken, I haven't seen this kind of mess. I had all my stuff packed and ready to go to Iran once upon a time. Thought I was going. I was pretty sure I was going, and they decided to do a smaller operation, and it failed largely for a lack of logistics. It was one of the big things that hamstrung that operation. We had tanks and airplanes over there that just weren't operating, because they didn't have spare parts.
Yeah.
And it was a fiasco. And when it went down, I thought, really, I totally understood it, because that's what I was dealing with the stuff I was supposed to be sending over there. It was like, we weren't ready to go. So when I look at this now, I'm seeing that we got guys, the Pentagon just announced, just a Monday that we're sending 8,000. We're potentially, we got 8,500 people that normally have 10 days to get ready, and we told them to be ready in 5 days. We're rushing all this. I would suppose Putin, if he's really wanting to roll in, he's also seeing that, and he's going to want to roll before we get anything over there. They apparently want to do this while the ground is still frozen in Ukraine, if they're going to do it. When I see them taking in that Iskander missile and things like that systems, which is short range ballistic missile, which is what Putin said that he didn't want to see us putting into the NATO countries that were former East Bloc countries. He's trying to get us, keep us from doing that. Yet he's putting them on the Ukraine border. The only reason you would do that was for attacking. That's to hit Kyiv. We're at the precipice of a war. I don't know if we're going to go into Ukraine or not, but whether we do or not, I can see this escalating. If Putin thinks it's going to escalate, it's all perception. If he thinks it's going to escalate, that's where we get the EMP. Or cyber attack. It's all perception. So guys, we are in a time of peril. Get ready, prepare, make yourself right with your maker, with your creator. If you don't believe in such, then God help you. But go out to your family and start talking about your plan of actions, what you're going to do and how you're going to meet. Make sure you can get your kids out of the schools. And as Stacy Zivicki told us in my last video with her, plan these things out. Don't let your gas tank get under half full anymore. You may not have a chance to buy gasoline again. Get your generators ready. Get everything ready. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we'll luck out and this stuff will blow over. Maybe. Pray and prepare. Pray, and prayer. That's redundant on the prayer side, but I think that's what else can we do? We're losing control of this situation. It's in the hands of some people in the Pentagon who got their own agendas and administration. It's getting out of our control.
Well, Greg, I've appreciated being on here. I got my grandkids waiting for me before I put them in bed, so that's why I'm gonna have to disengage now. And
you need to take care of that. That's top priority. The grandkids.
I know.
We all need to remember. Go out and hug and love your family members every chance you get. That's the most important thing you can do. That's the most important. And go out and try to spread a little love in the world. We need it so bad right now. So just bear that in mind, and don't bear hatred in your hearts. All these people, even the people in Russia, they're people just like us.
That's right.
We're all being played. We're all being played by by people who have other agendas.
Definitely.
So that's what it boils down to. Any troop, any soldier knows that on that other side of that battlefield, there's another guy just like him. He just happens to be aiming at you, so you can't you got to
exactly like you.
Yeah, he's just like you. He just happens to be aiming at you, unfortunately. So you got to deal with it. All right, guys. Thank y'all for watching, everyone. Everybody, I'll do a live session a little bit later tonight. So I want everybody to take care, and I'll catch y'all later. And Greg out.